Hey guys, Ben Simpson here at Some Vlogs, and welcome back to another What If video. And also, welcome to another video in a strange surroundings. You can see I am not where I normally am. So apologies if the audio sounds weird. Don't think it does from a few tests I've done, but the lighting in this room is terrible. And the video quality, for some reason, is just the settings are wrong or something about this room and lighting in it. Anyway, sit back, go snap, go drink, kick your feet up. More importantly, tune in for another What If video. Like, comment, subscribe down below. Hit the bell notification to get up to date not only with this series, but with this entire channel. Of course, you can check out my main channel, Simpson Plays, link down in the description, along with TikTok, Instagram, Rizzle, and Twitter. And of course, my website with blogs, thoughts, and updates for your lovely faces to enjoy. So, World War One, the most catastrophic, bloodiest, ugliest war in human history. It did not have the terror of the Second World War or the scale, but the sheer horridness of the conditions of fighting and the atrocities, borderline human experiments with the way some of the new inventions and of weapons of terror were used on people is just unfathomable. And the scale of human desolation was just horrible. But for good of fancy words and inflated terms, could Germany have won World War One? Now, contrary to many people's beliefs now, at the time and before the war even actually began, Germany could have quite easily won World War One. And there's many reasons why Germany could have won World War One, and in fact should have won World War One. If it wasn't for a series of luck, then it's quite possible Europe would have looked a lot different than it does today. And in fact, the world. Now let's explore the idea of Germany win. Now, how would Germany win World War One? Okay, so let's say everything that happened leading up to World War One happens as it did. You know, Franz Ferdinand dies, he's assassinated. Germany issue the motion of support, the blank check, to the Austrian-Hungarian Empire, and the Austrian-Hungarian Empire declares war on Serbia, who is protected by Russia. Russia join, Russia calls France, France calls Britain. World War One. So, now bear in mind, World War One is actually very loosely defined as a world war, because you have to remember that it only becomes a world war once Germany's colonies start being attacked by Japan, and Belgium, and stuff like that. And once America ends up joining the war, then it becomes a world war. Before that, it's just the Great War. Okay, so it's the war of European powers. It's not quite a world war yet, Yes, there's conflicts going on in Africa and conflicts going on again in parts of, Burma and that part of the world, Indonesia, Australia, Australasia, all those parts of the world, and indeed China. But again, you have to remember, it only becomes a world war once the British and the French get the Japanese to attack German colonies in China, German colonies in the Pacific. And they do that by encroaching on Japan, wanting to seize these colonies to increase their own empire, which, it comes back to bite people in the ass, doesn't it, from World War II. But anyway, we're going off topic as I always do. Could they have won? Well, let's look at the facts. When the war started, France didn't invade Germany. They stayed on their borders, almost exactly like they do in World War II. They don't attack, they stay. Now, Germany's got a split front, okay, because it doesn't quite trust the Austrians. But, the bulk of its forces are in the West, contrary to World War II. So the bulk of its forces are in the West, so they attack France more or less by themselves. They go west. Whereas the forces that are in the East, they stay on their borders and allow the attack from the Russians. Obviously, we know how that goes. The Russians have a series of disasters. Thousands upon thousands of their troops are captured, encircled. It goes terribly wrong for Russia. And the story is the same in the West. Germany have a hell of a time. They have an easy road. You know, they mash up the French. They force the French back several tens of miles back. You know, it's a war of movement. Okay, the war of movement opened up. It's only then they get bogged down by 1915. It's only by 1915 do we get this trench warfare. You know, where, you know, lines are drawn in the sand, so to speak. You don't get that in the East. It's a war of movement. Russia constantly losing territory. They lose Poland completely. It's the German forces mainly leading the charge. You know, and outnumbered German forces. And we already know what happens with Russia. You know, the culminating of their losses, and then Germany throwing in the Bolsheviks. You know, Russia out of the war. Okay, so it goes out that way. Russia out of the war by 1917. Yes, I think that's right. They're out of the war. So let's say they're out of the war. Exactly, everything is going exactly like it does. Now, the only way I can see Germany winning the war. Remember, Germany is still outnumbered. Okay, they are still outnumbered. Okay, and they've lost their territories in the East. They're losing their colonies in Africa completely on by now. The only way they can win is to beat France. Okay, they have to beat France. They've beaten Russia. Russia are out of the war. They need to beat France. It's the only way they can win this war. It's a do or die moment, isn't it, for the Germans? All right, so their last charge is coming up. You know, it's getting to that summer of 1918. It's getting to that last charge. Okay, they're running out of resources. There's this last charge. It's all they can do. They've got to get to Paris. And a lot of people forget how close they came to pulling that shit off. Okay, they destroyed the French army. They hit them with everything they got. The artillery shelling was ridiculous. It was a disaster for the French. They were in full retreat. Okay? And you have to remember who saved the British and the French when that last summer or so happened. The Americans. Okay? So the only way Germany can win World War I is for America to not get involved. Now, the Americans were never going to get involved with a European conflict. It wasn't their fight. It's not like, you have to remember what it was. It's not like World War II, where America was actually invested in Europe and had interest in stopping a world war. At least the government did. Maybe not the people, but the government did. In this one, it's more the people who've got an interest in stopping the war. You know, liberty. American values is liberty and freedom. You know. I'm back, guys. Apologies for that alarm went off. Anyway, the American values are liberty and freedom. And, you know, the Kaiser and that the monarchy represents an oppression that they fought against when they fought against the British for their own independence. So when that news is brought back to America, there's a bit of a kind of, we feel you, we understand, we want to help. But the government doesn't want to get involved. They only intervene when that telegram is intercepted by British intelligence and given to them. So, for those of you who don't know this, the Germans foolishly sent a telegram to Mexico promising the Mexicans that when they won, you know, when they won in Europe, they would help them take back the states of Texas, you know, and parts of California and Nevada for Mexico that they had previously lost in Mexican-American wars. Obviously, the Americans were outraged and more than enough reason to jump in. So there's two routes where I see that America's getting involved. Either the Germans don't send that telegram, or history plays out like it does. They send a telegram, it gets intercepted, because it would get intercepted. You know, British intelligence at the time was far superior than German thing, and was easily able to crack codes and intercept telegrams. They were doing it throughout the whole war. It wasn't just that one case. So the only way it doesn't happen the way it does in history is for the Americans to be too slow to mobilize. You have to remember at the time, the Americans don't have an army. They don't actually have an army. You know, there's a reason they have the gun laws that they do. They're archaic now, but back then, they didn't have an army. So if they were to be invaded, it's a good thing that everyone has a gun so they can muster a defense. You know? But At the time, they don't have an army, so they muster an army. They get 1 million men in a ridiculously short amount of time to join the American army and sail to Europe. So a few things have to go wrong in this case. This is what the scenario would be. Either the Americans at the time, they didn't want to send their men untrained into fighting. They didn't want them to get slaughtered. They eventually send them half-baked into the fight. And they lose a few men, but their overwhelming numbers and their industrial superiority with the tanks and all that makes them win. Makes them throw the Germans back, and it's all over for Germany by that point. But if they're too slow to mobilize, either they stick to what they said and they want to train the men up properly and fully before sending them across, or if they don't get enough men in time and don't send them across the sea in time, and Germany can get to Paris before the Americans can land in France, Germany wins World War One. Okay, so when the Germans got to near enough to Paris, the French did put up a good fight. Okay, they held them on long enough for the Americans to come. But remember, the only reason they held this is because the Americans had already landed. The Americans already landed on the shores, and they knew they were coming. If there's no guarantee of them coming, the morale is only going to hold for so long. Even if it's Paris, your morale is only going to hold so long against deafening artillery that is relentless. Okay, it's all over. Paris falls, and it's a complete collapse of France, similar to what happens in World War II. That's what happens. Britain retreats, it leaves France. France is done. It negotiates a surrender. What this surrender would look like is Britain keeps all of her colonies. Okay, make no mistake about it. Because Britain controls the sea, so it doesn't have to surrender any land. Contrary to what some games, as you see in the title of this video, and you see the thumbnail, I've used the Kaiserreich title from the mod Kaiserreich from Hearts of Iron 4. If you don't know about this, that's a cool strategy game, similar to World War II. Obviously, the mods for it can simulate all sorts of scenarios, World War One included, and after World War One included. So, it kind of inspired this video. Shout out to the guys at Kaiserreich. Obviously, if you're liking this video so far, like, comment, subscribe down below. Your thoughts and opinions. Could Germany have won? Going back to our little scenario. Yeah, the forced surrender would be Britain keeps all of her colonies. America might have turned straight on Mexico straight away after that debacle with the whole telegram, just to stir up themselves from a newly superpowered Germany. Now, make no mistake, Germany now becomes a superpower. Germany would seize all French colonies. Germany would regain her own colonies and now be a dominant threat to British African colonies. She would seize all French colonies overseas, in Indonesia, in India, in China. Those little port cities that the Europeans had. Germany would turn herself into this protectorate, most likely. She wouldn't seek to control France directly. She would probably sit a puppet monarchy on the throne. Again, in Poland, they would free the Poles as a barrier against the Russians, against Russian communism. And Russian communism would be the next enemy they look to conquer. Because whilst the British parliamentary, they have a close relationship. They may have just gone to war, but they have a close relationship. They're related. They have similar ideologies. Similar, not the same, similar ideologies. And communism is the enemy. Okay? So the guns will be pointed at Russia. Not Britain still, Russia. Now, what would the world look like in that sort of a scenario? Well, you're probably looking at Italy would have fallen to Austria-Hungary. They would have helped the Austrian-Hungarians take Italy and reform more or less the Holy Roman Empire. Turkey would have been able to encroach on southern Russian emperor states, places like Armenia and Georgia. Them places would fall. Now, I don't know how the Egyptian Suez one would go. I'm not seeing Britain willing to give that up, but they might not have choice. You know, Britain might not want to give that up, but if France has fallen, and now Germany, Austria, and Turkey can fight in Egypt, they don't want to lose any more African colonies. So I'm seeing that Britain potentially most likely cedes Egypt and the Suez. Very bad for Britain. But they'll hold on to India, but it's very bad. Kind of cuts their empire in half with them having to sail through that sort of territory. I don't know if they would want to give that up. Don't know. But you also have to remember at the time, Britain had initiated the Arab rebellion. So who even knows if the Ottoman Empire is in any position to even... To make things simpler, let's say the Ottoman Empire is not in a position to do that. Because it's most likely they wouldn't be, following history. They wouldn't be most likely in a position to do that. So there would be a weak Ottoman Empire, but it's still existing Ottoman Empire. It wouldn't collapse into modern day Turkey as we know it. So that is the situation of the world. Now, going forward in time from that, World War II will not happen. Not in the same way. It won't be a crazy dictator man looking to eradicate entire races from the planet. So the persecution of the Jews wouldn't happen. And without the persecution of the Jews, there wouldn't be the German scientists going to the United States. Not necessarily. As long as there's no persecution of them, they wouldn't go to the United States. You have to remember, a lot of the reason these scientists ended up in the United States was because they were Jewish, or from a Jewish background, or Jewish parents would be persecuted under Hitler's Germany. Under the Kaiser's Germany, that wouldn't happen. So now Germany retains its science, which means they potentially are the ones who create the atom bomb. Now, that's not good. That's not good. That's not good at all for the rest of the world. Because now that makes Germany the most powerful nation on the planet, and would likely end with Russian subjugation and the return of Tsardom, or puppet Tsardom at least, underneath German rule. Britain herself would be under extreme threat and would definitely align herself with the United States. Now, together they would potentially be able to create their own atom bomb in time to counter this, but you'd get a very dangerous Cold War. A Cold War looking that battle lines are at the water's edge, where all land belongs to Germany and everything across the water belongs to the United States and Britain. And you're looking at a very, very, very dangerous atmosphere in Europe. And instead of the Balkans being this powder keg that we associate with, or even if we go modern day to our own time period, where we associate the Middle East and Afghanistan and all them places as a powder keg, we would associate the Atlantic itself as a powder keg, the Europe as a flashpoint for a conflict that would destroy the world. So yeah, that is the scenario. I wish I was a far better YouTuber and editor, and I could show you guys all this, where these battle lines would be drawn and how little things would play out on the screen, like those cool guys you see on history things. I like them, they're cool. I wish I could do that. I'm sad. But yes, in my opinion, if Germany won World War I, you would see them subjugate and puppet countries, not conquer them, because it knows it can't actually flipping do that. That's just difficulty it doesn't need. It's better to have self-governance with oversight that they can jump in at any time than not. Now, could it hold this for a long time? Again, I don't know. But with the atom bomb, anything's possible. If they were able to retain their scientists and create the atom bomb first, they're definitely defeating the Russians with bombs on the border. I'm not saying they won't destroy Moscow, because that would be silly. It would just be the Russians would be subjugated underneath a puppet rule, and Germany would have this more or less Holy Roman Empire across Europe, as in the days of Charlemagne and afterwards. So yeah, that is what would happen if Germany won World War One, in my own opinion. Of course, you're free to and entitled to your own opinion, guys. So I'm going to love you and leave you with the thought of what would you think would happen if Germany won World War One? How would they win? How long would their victory last for? And could they dominate Europe, as I predicted, for years to come afterwards? Make sure to like, comment, subscribe down below. Hit the bell notification, keep up to date with everything going on this channel, as well as this series. Please continue to show love and support for the What If series. I'm enjoying doing them and enjoying thinking about all these crazy scenarios of what if. Now, I'm going to leave you with, check out links down below to my main channel, Simpson Plays, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and Rizzle. The list gets ever longer, I forget. A donation link you can be able to, and of course, my website, simpsonplays.com. Now, be safe, continue to think about what if, and peace.